Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and as it happens this is a Dungeon Master's Guide, and it's a Dungeon Master's Guide for the Lost Mine of Phandelver. Now I have many videos on this topic now. There is a playlist that you can go and check out called Lost Mine of Phandelver DM Guide, and there's a whole bunch of different topics in that playlist that you can go and check out if you want. I have done things on various characters such as Gundren Rockseeker, Nezznar, the Black Spider, Venomfang, preparing this adventure, all that sort of stuff that you might need to use at some point or want information on. So go check that out if you want to at a later date, not right now. But today we're going to talk about a particular topic, and that is another character, another major NPC or character in the adventure that you will probably come across near the end, and that is Mormisk, the spirit of a restless wizard. So Mormisk is a wizard, or was a wizard should I say, a very powerful mage many years ago, and he met his end during a rather heated magical spell-slinging battle, and in the heat of that battle during an orc attack on the cave, the Wave Echo Cave, he was killed, and as a result he's been in the Wave Echo Cave ever since. Even though he is in fact dead, he's still around, he just won't give it up. Now Mormisk resides essentially in the Wave Echo Cave location. You'll find him pretty easily. He's not difficult to source, but he's hanging out in the old wizard's quarters most of the time. That's where he spends most of his time during the adventure, and that's where you're likely to have the players encounter him. Now the book has a reasonable amount of information on Mormisk, so if you turn to page 47 of Lost Mine of Phandelver, you will find he is pretty well covered. Compared to some of the other NPCs, he's actually got a reasonable amount of information, and you can read between the lines, but they have spelled out quite a lot of information, which I thought was excellent compared to some of the characters we've had to deal with. Now that's area 14 on your Wave Echo Cave map, so you just check that out later on. I'm going to say right now that this particular wizard quarters, as far as I can tell from the adventure, wasn't just his quarters. It was a section of the cave complex that is used by many wizards, or was used by many wizards. It wasn't just Mormisk's location that he would reside in, as far as I can tell. So that means that there's probably a bunch of stuff left over there that has nothing to do with it belonging to Mormisk at some point. But now he's dead, I don't think anybody's going to sort of pick a fight with him and struggle for whether he has control over that or not. That would be kind of foolish if you ask me. So, transformed into a hate-filled apparition by centuries of anger and evil deeds and acts. That's what's happened to Mormisk. Now I know you're thinking, well, it doesn't actually state that he performed evil deeds and tasks and stuff like that, but I would like to point out that if you have a look at the monster manual and you look at Wraith, it does talk about sort of the aspects that they needed to have to form that, and I think based on the way that Mormisk is described, he's quite clearly quite greedy. He seeks power. He's a wizard. That tends to be an aspect of wizards anyway. So I think we can pretty much jump to the conclusion that he has at some point done things that were muddying the waters, a little bit grey and maybe even a little bit black. So I think at some point he's definitely done some evil acts before he died, not just after he died. I mean, clearly he's now an evil creature because it states in the stat block that he's evil. So Mormisk's soul has been poisoned by greed and power. That's my view. Mormisk now leads, I wouldn't say it's a legion, but it's a small force of undead. So he leads the undead that haunt Wave Echo Cave, and they're guarding the forge of spells. But they're not just guarding that location. They're actually sort of guarding the entire complex. And this is what's going to make it really difficult for the players and for Nezznar the Black Spider to even take a foothold in this place, because there are so many undead creatures in there, and a Wraith is no easy feat to deal with. So Mormisk has amassed a small fortune during his lifespan, and I wouldn't say it's the size of a dragon horde or anything like that, but what has happened is, as a result of that, he's got extremely frustrated. And how do you contend with being so greedy and having this small fortune, but you can no longer touch it? You're no longer corporal. So he's frustrated by the fact that he can't touch what he once possessed. All his wealth he cannot touch. All of the magical items or books that he used to, it's more like books rather than magical items, because there really isn't that much in the way of magical items for him at this present time, but the books of lore on history and the arcane arts and all of that, he can't actually open them and use them, so he can't access them, and this is what really fuels this Wraith. Now, don't even think that this Wraith is a nice guy, because he's not. No Wraith is. Okay, so when the player's characters come across the Wraith Mormisk, they're definitely going to have to contend with Mormisk trying to kill them. And the adventure sort of goes into a little bit of detail around that, unless they provide a good reason why Mormisk should not attack them. Because as far as he's concerned, they are just grave robbers trying to take his stuff, and they shouldn't be there, and they're going to forfeit their life. And there's a little bit of dialogue, which I have to say, I'm so glad it's not a monologue. It's not a huge amount of information for you to communicate as a dungeon master. The big plus when that happens, big plus. But he does have a fair amount of coinage and gems, and he has a few items that are particularly important to him, which is why he's not going to leave that location straight away. There needs to be something taking place. The players aren't going to be able to scare off this Wraith. There's going to be some sort of conflict if they try to take anything. So they need to try to reason with Mormisk first, and they need to do it quite quickly, because he will attack them, and they're going to have to bribe Mormisk with the thing that he likes the most. And the thing that he likes the most is, in fact, magic. That's the thing that he's most interested in. This Wraith is going to listen to the characters only long enough to assess them, to see if it's worth his effort to have any more discussion with them. So if they take too long, that's going to work against them. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at that particular aspect of Mormisk, that he is really trying to assess what their worth is. Now, there is an item within the adventure that talks about, he's not going to leave this particular item or part with it. I believe the treasure that is listed is 1,100 copper pieces, 160 silver pieces, 50 electrum pieces. There's 3 diamonds, each worth 100 gold pieces, and then there's a wooden pipe adorned with a platinum filigree, which is worth 150. Now, it's the pipe that he's not going to part with. He's certainly not going to part with any of his books of history and lore and magic. So if there's any sort of discussion about parting with that, he's not going to part with that. But he would trade up, if they can provide him with a good enough reason, he would trade up the things like the coins and the diamonds. Those are things that he is not terribly interested in. Part of his treasure hoard is a mysterious map, which I've actually talked about before, and I'm sure somebody's going to be asking, what's the deal with the map? Well, basically, this is you as the Dungeon Master getting an opportunity to turn that map into anything you like. I would imagine that because Mormisk has it, whatever X marks the spot on the map is probably going to lead them to something magical. So if you're going to use another adventure or as a jumping off point for further adventures after the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which I've already talked about before. Like I did a video called The Next Adventure after Lost Mine of Phandelver, and I suggested using Tales from the Yawning Portal. And the hidden shrine of Timochin is a good example of using that. That could be sort of leading them into that adventure so they can find that location. It doesn't have to be that. There's also another good option, which is Storm King's Thunder, leading them into that adventure as well. That adventure, Storm King's Thunder, is sort of built to allow for the Lost Mine of Phandelver to be run first and then lead into Storm King's Thunder. But it can essentially be anything the Dungeon Master wants. So don't get caught up in the fact that it doesn't spell out the information. It's just providing you with a whole lot of extra options and possibilities if you're interested. Now, if the player's characters attack, harm, or touch any of the Wraith's treasures, this will fuel his fury and rage. And a furious Wraith is always a bad one. Mormisk is only interested in power, and that sort of power needs to be magical, okay? The power that is granted by magic. So bribing him with magic items and arcane knowledge is really the only way that it's going to work. It doesn't have to work. There's still a persuasion check required, or charisma check. It's up to you whether you use that check or not. I don't think it necessarily needs to be utilized in the adventure, but I know if you're a new Dungeon Master, you might want to play and run it out as it is written. Mormisk doesn't get along with a particular individual within Wave Echo Cave, and that's the Spectator. I don't think anybody does. I mean, this creature's completely mad. So if they decide to bargain with Mormisk, Mormisk will say, look, there's a Spectator, and if you go and wipe it out and kill it and dispose of that creature, then I will give you some of my goodies, and that'll be the coins and the diamonds. He's not going to part with anything else. He's not going to communicate what a Spectator is. We're not talking about the kind of Spectator that you see when you go to a football match or a rugby game or any kind of sports match. That's not the sort of Spectator we're talking about at all. So forget about that. No, this is a mad aberration from the Beholder family. Yes, it's a Beholder. It's a small one. It's not a full-powered one, but it's bad enough that both Nezznar and Mormisk don't like it. And nobody gets along with the Spectator. Mormisk has been working his undead forces quite hard recently, and for good reason, because there's a bunch of individuals who have been pretty much causing him a bit of strife. It's usually been quite quiet. First there was dwarves that showed up, and now he's got these drow and Neznar's forces disrupting his quiet little cave. So he's been disrupting Neznar's forces and messing with the drow's plans completely, making it very difficult. And all of the undead are going to do exactly the same sort of thing with the player's characters. And in the case, should Mormisk ever die, the undead will continue to do what they normally do, which is pretty much just stay in the room they are in currently and do nothing until something that's living comes into it, and then they will simply march towards it and try to kill it. That's all these undead really do. Nothing else. It's not complicated stuff, whether you're using zombies or skeletons or even maybe something like a ghoul. There's a particularly nasty one, an undead, which is the Flaming Skull. I mean, it's bad enough having zombies, ghouls and skeletons, but at the level they're playing, a Flaming Skull is quite capable of causing a lot of pain. One, it flies, it can cast Fireball, and it has access to other spells that don't really require it to roll any kind of attack or require any kind of saving throw, and that's Magic Missile. So not a very easy creature to deal with that's undead, and this is why getting near the Forge of Spells is so difficult, because Mormisk has been giving them instructions to make sure nobody gets anywhere near it. Why is Mormisk doing this? It's not like Mormisk can do anything with the Forge himself, because he's incorporeal. He doesn't have a body. He doesn't really sort of effectively manipulate the world anymore. but he's not going to let somebody else do it either. So that's why he's doing this. Now, I would like to point out that that flaming skull is probably one of the most deadly creatures in this location, and for Nezznar and the players to dispose of it is going to be quite difficult. And even if they destroy it, they have to follow through and make sure they do the holy water routine. Otherwise, the thing is going to come back to life in a short space of time, and they're going to have to deal with it again. I don't actually mind that idea myself. So, what's the deal with Nezznar and Mormisk? Well, Nezznar and Mormisk do not get along. Mormisk doesn't like his forces, been trying to stop them. It's quite frustrating for Nezznar to have to deal with Mormisk and his relentless. It doesn't matter. They don't sleep. The undead don't sleep. He can't wait for a weak moment in the forces' defences, because there is no such thing. So it's been a stalemate for quite some time between Mormisk and Nezznar. Now, whether you allow that to play out with the players, which I doubt will be the case, because the players are going to be quite powerful in comparison to the likes of Neznar's forces. It's all revolving around that Forge of Spells. That's where the key focus for everything is. One of the things I would like to point out with the cave location, it's large enough that it could be populated by many different creatures and monsters, and hence why there are a few other things other than undead in that location, but not all of them. The cave is wide enough and expansive enough that it could allow for various other things to live there. And there's a random chart that allows you to roll up different creatures, most of which are undead creatures that you can include and incorporate into the adventure as sort of like a random encounter or a patrolling undead group of some kind. So let's talk about the stat block. Mormisk's stat block and his tactics in the game. If you go to the Monster Manual, let's go to the Monster Manual 5e first, you'll notice that the Wraith is a little bit different to Mormisk's stat block. In fact, there are some differences that do stand out. Essentially, everything is the same except for the following. Mormisk has fewer hit points than a normal Wraith, and that's probably to depict the fact that he was more a wizard than a fighter in his past life. That might simply be that they decided they wanted to have this particular character slightly different to everything else. Who knows? I don't honestly know what the designers were thinking. I'm just guessing here now. He has the ability to do less damage. His ability to hit a target with his only offensive weapon, which is the life drain, that essentially is really just a little bit more, a little less damage, because his challenge rating is a 3 and the monster in the Monsters Manual is a challenge rating 5 Wraith. So they are different creatures. So if you wanted more additional information, I would definitely read page 302 of the Monster Manual about the Wraith, because you'll get a little bit more information on it and how they operate and work. The other thing that stands out is that this particular Wraith, Mormisk, doesn't use all of the Wraith's physical attacks and abilities. One of the things that I did notice is the incorporeal movement. Now, incorporeal movement for the Wraith in the Monster Manual states that when they move through another object or creature, it's considered difficult terrain, which means you're going to be moving, instead of when you're moving 5 feet, you'll be moving 10 feet. So difficult terrain slows you down. But there's no mention of that in the actual stat block for Mormisk. Now, that might be an error, but I think that that's actually probably quite deliberate. I think Mormisk can simply pass through things when he desires to, and it doesn't slow down his movement. And the reason I'm saying this is because his opening entrance is he rises out of the floor. So that to me largely suggests, and as I said, I'm guessing here now, that he can pass through an object and stay within an object without taking damage. and a normal Wraith can usually not do that. But it also states that he can't stay in a solid object, whether it be a creature or whatever, so he would be shunted out, but he wouldn't take damage, as far as I can tell. And like I said, I'm guessing here, that's one difference. The sunlight sensitivity is pretty much the same. The life drain is essentially the same. The attack, I believe the attack modifier is only different by, is it one degree or 1 point? I think the normal Wraith has a +6 and Mormisk gets a +5 and then does a little bit less damage. But Mormisk doesn't create specters. Now, why does Mormisk not create specters? It spells it out in the adventure book in the stat block. Because Mormisk believes when something dies, it should stay dead. And so bringing back somebody from the death or undeath and using them as a slave is not something he's going to do. So how do you actually generate more undead in a location like this, like Wave Echo Cave? Personally, I don't think that's actually what takes place. I don't think that Mormisk spends his time creating undead in any way. If that's the case and his view is don't create specters, which a normal Wraith would be able to do, I don't think he would create things like skeletons and zombies and ghouls. I think those creatures have simply resided in that location because nothing else could survive and be left alone, because the Wraith was living there, because Mormisk was actually residing in the cave and he was so powerful compared to everybody else. Not to mention that flaming skull, which is actually a protector and guardian for that location, and when they died, they remained a guardian, an undeath. Okay, so that's my view on the stat block. One of the things you might notice also too with Mormisk and his stat block is he used to be a wizard, but he has no spell casting features whatsoever. So essentially Mormisk has only one offensive weapon, and that is simply the ability to use his life drain. So combat tactics are going to be pretty simple, and it's going to come down to essentially one or two things. Does the Wraith flee if hurt? And I personally think it can go both ways. I think that you could play out the Wraith as fleeing in combat if it gets hurt, or play it out as not fleeing and fighting to the death. I think that's completely up to you. One of the things I know, I've spotted this many times, and that is the confusion around damage resistance with monsters. And honestly, I think as a dungeon master, you play it out as you see fit. The Wraith in the monster manual talks about any kind of damage that is acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't silvered. Now, I noticed that particular reference that I'm just calling out is from what I'm showing you on the screen, but my monster manual, which is a newer monster manual, actually reads the following. All of the damage types that I talked about, and slashing from non-magical attacks not made with silvered weapons. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the magical weapon has to also be silvered? Or is the silvering process part of it being a magical weapon? I know that always comes up and being an issue. Truthfully, I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to just suggest to you as a dungeon master, decide how you're going to run that and go with it. Okay? I know there is an entry somewhere in the player's handbook that talks about magic weapons, the silvering process is part of it becoming magical. But you might decide, well, actually, no, I want to run it slightly differently. And there is different wording for Mormisk in the stat block too, which is different to the other ones that I've just gone over right now. And if I can just find it for you, because I know it's going to be a question that people will ask. It goes over the different damage types, and then it says, for damage resistance, any slashing from non-magical weapons that aren't silvered. I will leave it there. I don't want to go into any more detail on it. He has dark vision, he's got immunity to all sorts of different conditions and a couple of damage types. And that is essentially how Mormisk operates. So I think that it's far more interesting for Mormisk to actually flee from combat if things go badly. And I'm going to explain to you why I think this. I think that a recurring villain or an NPC or spanner in the works in the cave would be quite interesting, particularly since we're going to have dwarves trying to mine this location. How easy is that going to be if you have a wraith that constantly shows up when somebody's isolated, on their own and very weak, and it's not the player's characters attacking them and killing them? Because that's pretty much what Mormisk is going to do. That's how I would play it out if I had the chance. All those sorts of plans, though, go out the window as soon as the player's characters are in the same room as Mormisk. Who knows what will happen? They may never get a chance to do any of that anyway, so fleeing from combat might not work. But I would suggest that things like the disengage and dodge action are all very well. They're not very interesting, so you've really only got your life drain, dodge and disengage. I don't think that a wraith is going to grapple any kind of creature or even push them. I don't think there's an awful lot of benefits to pushing the creature, even if pushing them prone, because essentially the only weapon that he has is life drain, so it doesn't really, I just don't see the point in doing it. It doesn't make sense to me. How you play it out is completely up to you. I think it would be far more interesting, as I said, to have him use his incorporeal movement to move through walls, disappear, come back later once he's had a short rest, and then mess with the party again, just to make things a little bit more exciting, a bit more interesting. Okay, so that's pretty much everything I have on Mormisk. As I said, I wanted to reiterate, he is a wizard, and you could add some spells to his repertoire to make him a little bit more interesting, because he doesn't have a lot of features that allow you to do different things with him. He's pretty simple. Okay, but if you're dealing with newer players, I don't think that's really going to be necessary. It might make him more interesting, but you might just wind up making it really difficult for the players' characters and wiping them out. Alone, Mormisk is actually relatively weak, unless they have magical weapons that can get through his damage resistance and are not doing damage that's necrotic or poison, which he's completely immune to. So that's everything I have. So if you found this video helpful, informative, or useful in some way, please share and like the video. If you like this sort of content, I do this sort of thing quite often. Usually there's a Lost Mine of Phandelver video each week, about the same time and day as right now. So you can see more of them. I have a playlist full of them as well. So consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed and you like this sort of thing, and hit the bell button to be notified when I go live. If you want to support my channel so I keep doing this, then look, you supported me by watching this and I do appreciate it. I have hundreds of videos and you're welcome to check them out. There's bound to be something you will find useful. Not everything's gold, but I'm sure there'll be something you might find useful in there. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description there are affiliate links, you know those things, to the book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price as you normally would, and just go through that link and buy what you want. You do not have to buy the thing I have linked to. Now, any additional information that you might need, I have put in some locations for getting maps, some additional advice, some websites you can use. They're all in the description for this video, so you can go and check them out later on and just see what is written by Sly Flourish and Neuron Phaser. I'm sure you'll find them useful. And there's a website for purchasing really high quality resolution maps as well if you want that. Okay, now if you have feedback in the live stream, start typing fast as you can, your questions, your feedback. Just say hi, it's fine with me. Otherwise, if you're not part of the live stream, that's what the comments section's all about. Stick your comments in there and I'll get to your comments as quickly as I can. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.